Chapter 4 Infernal Deep.
With nowhere left to turn, Samus journeys deeper into the raging planet Zebes, leaving the exotic botanical gardens of Brinstar behind, and embracing the surging heat wave emanating from the cavernous inferno that is Norfair. Last she set foot in this treacherous place, she was blocked at seemingly every turn for one reason or another, but that has changed. Armed with the thermally resistant Varia suit, she swallows her fear and enters the only possible room where her new upgrade might just allow her to escape her current predicament of being trapped in the depths of the planet. The room is absolutely sweltering. Simply by stepping through the door, we can feel the thick, raging atmosphere billow its way into our nerves as we watch the heat ripple through the air all around us, distorting our vision. Now that we can tolerate the extreme temperature of this room, we can safely explore how to escape this confined cliffside we just entered into, dealing with the approaching Sova crawling around undeterred by the intense heat. By shooting the floor, we drop down into a long cavern with more Sovas. The ground below us is the only mechanical structure in the whole cave system, being strange maroon and pink square spiraling blocks, our only support over a boiling magma abyss. Just a few steps to the right, we are met with a new leaping enemy called a Desgiga, which functionally behaves like their side-hopper relatives closer to the surface. However, the Desgiga is a much more threatening foe, and there are two of them down here with us. Aside from the same erratic movements these species share with sidehoppers, the bulky red arms of the Desgiga are coated in spikes, and they'll take full advantage of their anatomy by crushing and ramming themselves into anything that gets too close to their territory. One missile isn't even enough to take these strong enemies out in a single hit, so keeping our distance and dealing with them from afar is the safest strategy. After dealing with the two brutes, we reach the right of the room where a platform above us leads us up a tall shaft where the high jump boots are necessary in order to make the leap to the red door above. This narrow opening is intentionally slanted inward in order to make jumping up here without the high jump boots very difficult, just in case we had accidentally found our way here without them, because if so, we likely wouldn't have the Varia suit from Kraid's lair. This way, players who dashed through the heat would be immediately stopped from going any further, believing that braving the heat without protection was intended. For these brave souls, there luckily is a way back up to the room prior, if the enemies and intense flames didn't kill them already. Though the shaft we dropped down had no platforms, the middle of the room does, allowing us to jump back up without the high jump boots and Morph Ball Bomb jump our way back to the door we entered. It's a generous escape designed for the tenacious players that teases them with something they want, but isn't so cruel as to trap them in an inescapable situation. Speaking of death, we've been ignoring the possibility up to this point, but it's interesting to talk about what happens when we do die in Super Metroid. If Samus's health depletes to 0, she will freeze up in a flinching pose while the whole screen aside from her fades to white. Then suddenly her power suit gives way and explodes into shards as Samus's body is flung into the harsh elements of the planet. The sound effects for her death begin with a descending musical cue before a crash and Samus's voice crying out in pain. The game then fades to black with a game over message encouraging you to keep trying and find the Metroid larva, which chirps at us through its isolated glass containment. Underneath her power suit, Samus is wearing a revealing black two-piece and boots. It should be noted that if players hadn't beaten Metroid 1 or 2 before this point, then this would be the very first time that they would realize that Samus was a woman. Even the flashback sequences in the game's introduction hid this fact from us, as it's traditionally been a secret in the game's manuals and lore. The Metroid 1 manual repeatedly calls Samus he, outright lying to players about Samus's gender. However, it also hints at a bigger secret being revealed at the end if they manage to clear the game in record time. Doing so would result in several different ending sprites for Samus based on the amount of time spent beating the game. These endings would range from depicting Samus still in her power suit turning away in shame, facing the camera and waving, or removing parts of her suit revealing her identity. The NES manual made it clear that not even the Galactic Federation knew about Samus's true identity, going so far as to mistakenly identify her as a cyborg. Keep in mind that this was still the 80s, so gender equality was still far from being as universally accepted as it is today. So seeing a woman emerge from the hero's spacesuit after a harrowing, danger-filled journey was intended to shock people at the time. The first ending to show this depicts Samus revealing her face after removing her helmet, but these sprites are quite small, as she could still be mistaken for a man with long hair. The next best ending, achieved by clearing the game in under 3 hours, makes this undeniable, with Samus fully removing her power suit. She's depicted in a pink leotard and boots in order to accentuate her features and make the reveal impossible to miss, even with her tiny sprite size. But if the game can be cleared in under 1 hour, Samus's leotard will instead be replaced with a pink bikini. Whether this was intended to acknowledge the player's achievement in beating this massive, difficult game with new artwork, or as a hidden, perverted, slightly misogynistic secret ending is anybody's guess. Regardless, beating the game with Samus's identity revealed unlocks what could be considered to be the first ever New Game Plus mode, where upon starting a new game, Samus will now be in her leotard instead of the power suit. In Metroid 2, a similar set of endings reveals Samus's identity, and once again, if the game can be cleared in under 3 hours, Samus removes her suit and is depicted wearing a light two-piece outfit similar to a swimsuit. Though there is no New Game Plus outfit change, these would be the only instances of players possibly knowing about this secret aspect of Samus at this point in history. And it shouldn't be understated how difficult it is to clear Metroid 1 and 2 in under 3 hours. Neither game has a map feature, and both require speed and precision throughout the entire run in order to make it on time. This was meant to be a special award for dedicated players to be given the shocking truth about Samus's identity in a world where women were still seen as weaker than men. Keeping our perspective of 80s gender equality in check, these endings were meant to reveal something in the players and not so much the game. The only reason that it would be shocking at all that Samus was actually a woman is that the player holding the controller believed an intergalactic solo space bounty hunter's mission was a man's job. Though from our modern perspective looking back, it can easily appear that Metroid's endings were rewarding players by stripping down Samus more and more based on their performance, when the opposite effect was intended. Samus was seen as a revolutionary step forward in female representation in a male-dominated medium, leading the way for other tough female gaming icons like Chun-Li and Lara Croft, stamping out bigotry rather than enabling it. Back to Super Metroid, the closest hint we've had so far that Samus was actually a woman aside from dying was looking closely through her visor during the introduction monologue, where her eyelashes are drawn slightly feminine. That is, unless we read the manual, which makes no effort to lie to us again. It's 1994 and the reveal will only work once, so Super Metroid is coyly assuming we know about this fact. But instead of revealing it based on exceptional gameplay, we see it during our failures. We've discussed at length how frightening this mission would be for any of us to attempt in reality. Now imagine the worst case scenario. Our only lifeline keeping the dangers of this treacherous planet at bay, the power suit, is destroyed. Instantly, we succumb to the extreme temperatures, potentially uninhabitable pressure, and unbreathable atmosphere. This isn't an easy death. We die in unimaginable pain and suffocate just by being exposed to this deadly environment. That is, assuming that Metroid 1's New Game Plus mode was not intended to imply that Zebes was safe for Samus to survive outside her power suit. Personally, I don't see it as such, but we should keep in mind that Samus was raised here on the surface, meaning that dying in Crateria and losing her suit, Samus might have a chance at survival were it not for the acid rain. One last thing about her death animation before moving on. It's come to light that there was originally going to be a single frame of Samus's death where even her undergarments would disintegrate, and she'd be completely nude. Fortunately, due to how nudity was frowned upon in their Western audiences, the Japanese developers decided against adding this single unnecessary sexualized frame. Contrary to popular belief, no version of Super Metroid in any localization utilized this concept, and no game has since. It sounds like perverted developers trying to hide something erotic and potentially offensive in a Nintendo game, but keep in mind that nudity isn't seen the same way around the globe. Just think about how many Japanese anime intros utilize nudity for seemingly no reason, so don't try to hold the idea against them, regardless of how it sounds to a Western, much less modern audience. Phew. You see why I didn't want to cover the death animation for a while? It's an important aspect of the game that needs to be discussed, and if anything, for the full Super Metroid experience, I intend to be as thorough as possible. But with all that behind us, let's finally open the red door past that high ledge. Just inside, a new enemy swoops down in front of us. Checking out the caverns below, we discover our first Garuda. These heat-loving beasts behave like Rios, but pack more punch and firearm resistance. Their seemingly spastic movements and tall asymmetrical caverns makes this familiar moveset particularly challenging in this new environment. Moving further down, we're met with a Sova in a small pit of boiling magma. Our various suit resists heat damage though, right? Dipping our toe in, we discover the limitations of our new armor. Yes, it allows us to explore these dangerously hot caverns, but it can't deal with the intensity of liquid magma. Climbing back up and around, we find another 2 Garuda and more Sovas in and around these tall rocky outcroppings, dipping down into the magma below, the third of which holds a secret at the bottom. If we shoot in the magma, we reveal a hidden missile expansion. Yes, we take damage from the magma and are encumbered while moving within it like water, but nothing is stopping us other than that from picking up this expansion now. Whether you choose to grab this early or come back later when you're better equipped is your choice. Traveling to the right, we pass a green door which opens out into a long, narrow hallway which rumbles violently as magma rises from the ground below. The heat from the magma illuminates the dark stalactites lining the ceiling, fading to complete darkness in the distance. Though this room is meant to scare us, don't lose your composure. The magma will only rise a short distance and won't completely fill the room. Once the rumbling stops, clear jumping points emerge from the molten pool below, leading us across. As we make our way by, we pass a couple new enemies. The first is a red crustacean called a squeeped. It leaps in and out of the magma, propelling itself with some sort of biological jet propulsion. Though they have a lot of hit points, they are also easily avoided as these non-aggressive enemies pay us no mind, making accidental contact damage their only form of attack. The next new creature in this long corridor is called a dragon. Unlike what you might expect with a name like that, these creatures are territorial, magma-dwelling seahorses that spit balls of fire at passers-by. You might think the name to be silly, but the Japanese word for seahorse actually begins with the kanji for dragon. Anyway, these creatures tend to duck into the magma before emerging to spit fire at Samus. Like the squeeped, the dragon is more of an environmental nuisance than an aggressive hostile, though they can also be defeated with enough firepower. Once we reach the far right of the room, we can see strange green bubbling orbs dipping from the ceiling, lit by the orange heat below. The next room over is completely made up of this strange glassy structure of various clustered bubbling green orbs. Some of the orbs we can see through, and others are coated in a glossy film. The background is complete darkness outside of some scattered randomly clustered orbs. Is it possible that the intense heat of Norfair boiled some sort of element that cooled into glass-like spheres, trapping anything inside like fossilized amber? Or are we actually standing inside of an enormous alien nest, and these are all the eggs from a nearby hive? With that comforting thought, we climb the left side to reach a save station. It's odd that the architecture of save stations remains the same throughout Zebes, implying that the fierce molten destruction outside of this room wasn't always like this. Back in the room of spheres, we dodge a couple red waivers and investigate the structure in the center. There appears to be the remains of an entrance or an elevator with 2 frightening fang-bearing beast statues on either side, slightly covered by the plethora of whatever it is that's coating this room. If we keep moving right, we will fall through some invisible blocks and drop through some pitfall blocks. Bombing our way down this new mechanical shaft, we drop into a small enclosure with spikes on the ground between a couple metallic platforms. Avoiding them and the nearby Red Ripper, and yes, I am refusing to call it a Ripper too, we can pick up a missile expansion in the corner. Looking around, we can see some Sovas maneuvering through some similarly hidden corridors above us, but there's no way for us to break through the walls from this side to investigate. Instead, we must backtrack up the shaft we previously fell down, and I want to point out the pitfall blocks did not respawn here, as they would have actually trapped us below. A clever design choice to clue us into this hidden area without inadvertently trapping us. Once we reach topside, we can try jumping upward as the room continues above, but it's far too high for us to reach. Instead, we bomb the exposed portion of the metal blocks between the statues, and again bomb below them, dropping us into the hidden passageway with the Sovas. Forced to fight in morph ball form, we bomb our way through the blocks and enemies until we reach an opening past the eroding purple rocks and find 2 blue doors. Taking the left door will eventually lead us to the other side of the long room with the B-toms and blocks walls we can't destroy, and another blockade before and below this room, preventing our progress from this direction entirely. Interestingly enough, there are 2 new enemies in this magma pit, adorned with more menacing statues. Rising from the pools below are sets of 5 insectoids at a time called gametes. They rise up clustered as one before separating and buzzing recklessly towards us, using their numbers to form a wall. They look and behave similar to zebs, but due to this formation, gametes are much more of a problem. Fortunately for us, we found the spazer beam and have a much wider range of attack as well to compensate and utilize these respawning enemies to restock our health and ammo. To our left is another metal barricade locked from the other side, and to our right is the second new enemy burrowed in the wall with only its grotesque face showing. This creature is a fune, and from what little we can see, it's a huge tunneling worm with a vicious set of teeth and no eyes. The creature will belch a blue flame our way if we get too close, and the only way to defeat it is with a super missile. But it's interesting to note that these creatures bear a striking resemblance to a xenomorph from the Alien franchise, of which Metroid was heavily inspired. Specifically, the fune looks like the secondary extraneous mouth inside of the xenomorph's mouth. We could be here all day talking about the Alien references in Metroid, like Samus heavily resembling the protagonist Ripley, a strong female leader fighting invasive aliens, and Ridley, whose name is a direct reference to Ridley Scott, the creator of the series, on top of the obvious similarities in setting. But for now, let's just leave it at that. Anyway, with no other choice, we backtrack to the last room and drop through the blue door on the floor and enter into a dark purple stone bricked shaft with green plant-like tendrils drooping from the outcroppings. The heat is visibly distorting the background again, reaffirming the intense temperature increase during our descent. There are no enemies in this room, allowing us to freely drop down to the first door on our right, which is a small enclosed rocky dead end with a slimy green bubbling mass on the floor resembling the green orbs from before. Approaching them, we are attacked by more gametes, implying that the green bubble room from before may have actually been an enormous deposit of gamete eggs. Heading back and dropping lower still, we reach the bottom with another blue door which leads us into another magma-filled horizontal cavern. Inside we encounter even more new enemies. The first is a glowing orange orb bouncing around the room called a multiviola. These creepy creatures seem to have the image of a screaming, tormented face in them, endlessly wailing in agony, but maybe that's my pareidolia talking. The first game's manual claims these entities were biologically engineered by Mother Brain by somehow giving life to inanimate heated rock. Anyway, these bizarre creatures bounce around the room on a 2D plane like an old DVD screensaver. Sorry, I don't have a better way to describe it. These things are weird, and I'm getting old. Next up are the even more bizarre Magdalites. These molten creatures appear to be living clods of magma and will submerge themselves completely and rise upward to spew magma clumps our way. We can take them down with super missiles, but instead they're best left avoided, making this room full of moving hazards and precarious jumps and exercise in evasion and dexterity. Norfair has been a continual lesson that avoiding and surviving threats is sometimes more practical than trying to defeat everything that gets in our way. The room past the blue door at the end has another blue door across from it and a cavern below to drop down. Circling the sole platform is a blue multiviola. Truthfully, these are called violas, and are actually infant multiviolas. Whatever Mother Brain did to animate these perplexing globs is beyond our understanding, and it's debatable what their purpose even was, or if their engineering only concocted a torturous life cycle for the unnatural viola family. To me, they reek of testing the limitations of bioengineering, regardless of what environmental and ethical harm is caused as a result. A great simple enemy that makes me feel guilty for simply shooting it just to get it out of my way. Dropping down all the way, we are blocked by a yellow door and are given no alternative way forward other than the blue door we saw at the top of the room. Heading through it, the ground shakes even more violently than it did before, and the magma slowly rises. Chunks of rock are blown upwards from the force of the eruption. Jumping from platform to platform above the rising pool, we reach a dead end guarded by a fune, but this one's different than last time. There's a small peculiar block past a small tunnel underneath it, teasing us to bomb it, which we had better do fast fast as this time the magma continues to rise past the platforms, engulfing the entire room. The trick block was actually a hidden passageway and didn't require bombing, but past it we're once again trapped in another dead end, needing a quick escape. Firing sporadically will happen to destroy the thin blocks above us, giving us a chance to escape this infernal trap. Jumping above, we dodge one Fune after another, scaling the caverns until the platforms become mechanical, leading to a door on the top left. Hope you aren't thinking of turning back. We've officially become lost and consumed by Norfair. This next door lets out into a seemingly impossible room to progress through. There are no platforms above the huge pool of magma. On top of that, there's mechanical thrusting spikes reaching down from the ceiling. Our only clue lies with the single enemy in this room called a Tripper. Similar to the Ripper, the Tripper rockets slowly from left to right endlessly with its own unusual biological jet propulsion. However, Trippers are green with strange, perfectly flat crests above their heads. Any enemy we've so much as bumped into before would harm us through contact damage, but this one seems to be a living, moving platform and not hostile on contact. Considering we have no other choice, we leap to the Tripper and ride across the pit of magma, ducking into Morph Ball to quickly avoid the spikes from knocking us into the pit below. On the other side, we must quickly unmorph and jump to a single tile metal platform and maneuver around more spikes and rising and lowering blockades in order to safely pass. Whether this facility has been long destroyed and is malfunctioning, or is intended as a hazard to repel would-be invaders is unknown. Once we make it safely to the other side of these small platforms, we must utilize another Tripper as a platform in order to safely make it past the ceiling spikes and magma below. However, this Tripper isn't as strong as the other and will slowly drop down the longer we ride on it, so we must make a quick escape, leaping out of this room through the blue door at the end. Inside, we climb more rocky red cliffs until we're suddenly ambushed by yet another new enemy hiding in the ground below. A bipedal dragon called an Alcoon bursts from the rubble and begins spitting fireballs our way. Luckily, unlike their dragon relatives, Alcoons can be defeated with our regular beam and missile shots. There are also multi-viola bouncing around the room, complicating our ascent. Entering the first blue door we come across brings us to a large, open, seemingly empty room. At the far end, we can enter a morph ball tunnel and roll below a spiked floor above us with a Kago hiding in our path. A nice reminder of just how many different enemy types there are inhabiting Zebes. Exterminating the pests leads us to a thin series of destructible blocks, allowing us to climb up high enough to see a red door, but there's no way to progress any further. This small passageway exists to allow us to get a lay of the land for an upcoming challenge, and confirm that there is something worth our while at the end. Backtracking out of the room, we continue upward past another Alcoon and multi-viola and to a new red door. This leads to the upper portion of the large room we just discovered. We stand on a cliffside overlooking a Fune below and a series of floating bioengineered platforms called suspensors. Once we approach a suspensor platform, it will begin slowly moving up and down, making our jumps between them tricky while avoiding the Fune's flames and the stalactite above. Making it to the far right, we shoot to open a blue barricade, opening the way to a missile expansion, past which is a huge open chasm, which, as we recall, bottoms out into a spiked floor. Above are familiar odd blocks we can't yet utilize, so we accept our consolation prize and remember this place for later so we can eventually access that red door we already know is across the way. Two more Alcoons and a multi-viola impede our ascent up the shaft as we make it to the very top, which seems to be framed with the familiar green orbs from earlier spilling into this room. Entering the door confirms that we've finally re-entered the huge green bubble room from a previously inaccessible location. Climbing upward, we face a red Waver and a red Kakatak. These aren't new enemies cheaply palette swapped, they're actually regional variants of the same species sharing the very same stats as their Brinstar brethren, adapting to the heat of Norfair. Jumping down from this ledge would be very unwise, as it would force us to make the long journey back here all over again, though we do see more of those strange blocks above this chasm cluing us in to return here later. Instead, we turn to the green door to the right and blast it open. Past it, we're closed into a small green orb room with magma below and 3 screes above the scattered platforms. Instinctively, we shoot the screes to avoid getting dive bombed, but by doing so, we inadvertently destroy a single block in the ceiling, revealing the path forward. Jumping through the brilliantly breadcrumbed hole we just created, we continue to shoot upward until we emerge near a nest of gametes, strangely coming out of a brown, crusty nest amidst the rest of the green orbs, which may or may not be their own eggs. It's also worth mentioning the largest of the green orbs will glow with a red haze the closer they are positioned next to a neighboring hot room. It's been happening before before this point, but the orbs surrounding us here are almost all glowing bright red with reflective heat. There's definitely something past this blue door on the right. Entering it, we are in a long, narrow hallway with meteors hanging from the ceiling near stalactite. Knowing we already can't defeat them, we instead try running past them, and by doing so, we narrowly avoid their attacks, as well as the pitfall blocks below us. Continuing to run in this long hallway slanting down and to the right, we reveal more pitfall block traps, releasing otherwise enclosed Garudas into the room. If we somehow made it this far without running, the next segment will force us. We pass over a pitfall trap over a magma pit, and the remainder of the traps following are under a spiked ceiling. Much like the Brinstar Bridge that forced us to run, this assures that we don't try jumping across and instead let the blocks vanish beneath us as we run. The reason this was so important for us to learn will become apparent very soon. But before we open this red door at the end of the long corridor, let's try shooting the ceiling near it, revealing a sneakily hidden missile expansion. Trust me, you want to pick this up now before we enter this door. Inside, we uncover a Chozo statue. It's been a while, and we are eager for new upgrades. Shooting the item reveals an icon we have seen before on some blocks we couldn't destroy, a pointed arrow. Collecting it reveals it as the Speed Booster. This is a new item for the series, allowing Samus to build up incredible power while running, showcasing the processing power of the Super Nintendo. Unfortunately, as soon as we touch the Speed Booster, the room begins to rumble and the magma below begins to slowly rise. Urgently exiting the room, we run to escape, and as we dodge the rising magma, we accidentally demonstrate how to use the Speed Booster. At full running speed, Samus begins to flash white and blue and charges forward with incredible speed, destroying anything in her path. Colliding with the blue door at the end, we narrowly escape the room on time and return to the large room with the green orbs. Jumping down the ledge, we once again bomb through the secret entrance and through the Sova's corridors, leading us back to the long room with the B-toms and what we now know as Speed Booster blocks. By running at full sprint, we effortlessly blast through the blockade, obliterating the B-toms along the way, leading us right back to the save station at the entrance of Norfair. It was a long runaround, but we netted a powerful new tool that will help us uncover the path forward, and lucky for us, it's just above where we stand. The first room we entered in Norfair, the top left room, blocked us before we could make it to the end, but with our new Speed Booster, we can now barely slip past the blockades before they shut behind us. Doing so also destroys 2 blocks at the end, which drop us into a short recess in the metallic floor with another one of the gray symbols for an upgrade we don't yet have. These blocks were destructible to ensure that we notice the new ones below, and they will be important very soon. Passing them for now, we open the blue door and emerge into a magma-filled obstacle room where we must once again utilize trippers as platforms to make it safely across the gaps. The trippers will drop slowly as we weigh them down, so it's best to move quickly. The next room is over a zigzagging series of metal platforms with funes firing at us as we ascend. Paying close attention to the Sovas crawling around the blocked off right side of the room clues us into a small tunnel moving to the right. If we ignore this and attempt to leave out of the top blue door, we won't get far as the room is flooded with magma, and there's no clear way through the tiny hole just above the molten abyss below. The only clue is a new enemy bouncing from the magma called a Boyan, which we can't seem to even damage. Doubling back, we drop down through the Sova's hidden tunnel and enter the small opening where they were leading us. And thankfully it leads to yet another Chozo statue holding a new powerful upgrade, the Ice Beam. The Ice Beam stacks with our Spazer Beam and transforms our weapon into a frozen cannon capable of freezing enemies solid. As we exit the room and drop back down the Sova tunnel, we try out our new beam on the troublesome Funes, discovering just how helpful the Ice Beam can be. The Fune freeze instantly with a chilly sound effect as our beam connects, making avoiding them on our way back up substantially less troublesome. Learning how the Fune reacted to the Ice Beam, we return to the Boyan magma room and try freezing them. Luckily, the Boyans freeze mid-air when shot, allowing us to turn them into our own escape route. Freezing the far Boyan right as it reaches the tunnel we want to enter allows us to jump to it and roll through the opening with our Morph Ball. Just in case we didn't fully realize the magnitude of this new ability, the next magma pit is patrolled by a Red Ripper, which we freeze and leap across in order to escape. The game just made absolutely sure without saying anything that we now know we can use our new Ice Beam to freeze enemies, including Rippers, and use them as platforms, reminding us of the long drop we fell down in Lower Brinstar filled with Rippers. We can finally escape! Passing through the blue door, we drop through a series of pitfall blocks and bomb our way above the ceiling in the metal speed booster gated blockade room. There's a sova in this hidden shaft that clued us into this room continuing further when we first entered, so we take it out and roll all the way to the right and drop through a pitfall block by the entrance. Exiting with a new goal, we ascend the elevator and return to Lower Brinstar in hopes of freezing our way back up the cliffside. On the way back, we can take comfort in knowing we can now instantly shut down enemy threats by freezing them. The yapping maws, for example, are rendered completely docile once frozen, and can even be used as platforms themselves to help us get across the water. Once back in the tall red swampy shaft of Lower Brinstar, we can attempt to freeze the Rippers one by one, using them as stepping stones to climb our way back up to where we first fell down here so long ago. The opening we're looking for is slightly to the right in the ceiling, so it's best to freeze Rippers one by one and keeping slightly right of the screen until we reach a tiny ledge near the top right side, where the final Ripper can be frozen in place, allowing us to escape the room. Shooting our way back up and out, we climb all the way back to the high ledge that we couldn't reach before. Luckily, these high ledges don't break when we land on them with the high jump boots, as they did when we tried morph ball bomb jumping. After several more high jumps, the walls tighten in around us and we are given Rippers instead of ledges to freeze and jump between to reach the very top of this column. At the very top, the ceiling is closed off, but by simply shooting it, we open a path and leap up to a blue door, finally reaching the precipice of this incredibly tall room. The Rippers and beam blocks we just passed were all checks to ensure that we didn't make our way up here without the necessary upgrades. Bomb jumping past a handful of Rippers in a thin vertical shaft would be an absolute nightmare anyway, if not altogether impossible, and the beam blocks at the top would almost assuredly lock us below had we somehow succeeded. In the next room, we step into a hideous, overgrown thicket of fang-like thorns growing out of the walls, complete with gummy pink organisms holding them in place, creating a natural amoebous living hazard. There are only small platforms for us to make short, careful hops between in order to avoid the dangers above and below. The lesson of this room is that just because we have high jump boots, sometimes the safest way to progress is by executing quick, short leaps instead of fully pressing the jump button. A small colony of Zila and Zebo also complicate our traversal. However, these aren't exactly the only enemies in the room. There are also 9 huge carnivorous red plants below the pits and above our head, some of which the Zebo are even emerging from. If we happen to accidentally trip into one of these undulating masses of fleshy botanical horrors, teeth will emerge from the creature's oversized petals and latch onto us, preventing our escape, damaging us in the process. These abominations are comically named Samus Eaters. No, I'm not joking. They are literally called Samus Eaters. It seems absurd that a creature's actual name would be tied to a specific action it could potentially perform to a specific individual, but there you go. Considering Samus grew up on this planet, we can only infer that this creature was discovered and named by the Chozo based on some sort of real encounter that actually happened, comically mocking Samus's ineptitude to avoid this obvious trap. Samus likely remembers this unfortunate, embarrassing event in excruciating detail and is rolling her eyes at the very sight of more of these overgrown fanged Ralphasias. Either that or it's just a funny temporary filler name that never got replaced in the game's internal files. Regardless, it's pretty funny. Taking care not to let our humiliating history repeat itself, we make our way out of the room through the door on the right, which closes behind us with a yellow seal. This is either a good sign that we're about to get a new upgrade, or we just stumbled into a terrible trap. And based on which direction we go from here, either could be true. Hopefully your instincts at this moment will draw your eyes to the suspicious square segments of the red mucky floor, and bombing it will open a hidden tunnel below our feet. Dropping down, we're enclosed in a small space with no clear way out, but beneath our feet and to the right we see a gross, grub-like larva emerge from its discarded gray cocoon and crawl up the walls. Reflexively, we aim and fire at the huge bug regardless of the floor separating us, but by doing so we actually blast open the only vulnerable segment of the floor, revealing the path forward. Isn't this game just absolutely brilliant? Anyway, we drop down only to find a couple more of these oversized molting caterpillars. These creatures are called Zeros, and interestingly enough, are in fact Kai hunters in a larval stage. They're harmless outside of accidental contact damage, and are curiously far from the nearest patrolling Kai hunters. Their purpose here seems to be in creating a fuller, more realistic space. We just burrowed into a sludgy tar pit and scared 3 infant grubs out of their shells upon entering. It's creepy just looking at them, and even though they pose no real threat to Samus, they still infect us with our innate repulsion for slimy, creepy crawlies. Destroying the green door at the basin of the Zero nest opens out into a metallic framed corridor with a rocky blue blue backdrop. Though there are more delicate jumps over spiky Samus Eater pits going across, we feel relief to hear the lower Brinstar melody shift into the item room theme. Making our way across by freezing the bouncing boyons to make safer platforms to cross, we reach a Chozo statue offering us a new upgrade with yet another recognizable icon we've been impeded by in the past. A grenade-like yellow notched orb. This is the Power Bomb, and its utility can be best learned by dropping one right away. Now available on the top screen alongside our missiles, we can hit select to cycle over to these new weapons, enter Morph Ball, and hit X to unleash a tremendous explosion, engulfing everything on screen. Rewarding our curiosity, the entire wall behind the Chozo statue collapses, allowing us to inspect the extended chamber beyond and collect a bonus missile expansion. This was a wonderful way to encourage us not to feel bad about spending limited ammunition for the sake of gaining knowledge. I should also note that a power bomb isn't truthfully a full-screen explosion, as we can actually outrun the blast to see its limited radius, which is about the size of the full screen where it was initially dropped. Power bombs are new to the series, and though they are powerful and useful in their own right in terms of combat and exploration, Super Metroid locks away several secret techniques through the use of power bombs. The vast majority of players won't even realize that these abilities exist, as the manual makes absolutely no mention of them. It does, however, hint at Samus's extra abilities being demonstrated in the title screen's attract mode, during which we can watch Samus performing all sorts of powerful attacks and tricks, but with no direct explanation on how to perform them. Typically, these flashy abilities mostly go unused. To explain how the first set of abilities work, we'll first have to examine an element of the pause menu we've neglected up until this point. When we pull up our map, we can press R to move to the second menu, detailing Samus's current upgrades, where L will return us to the map. On the upgrade screen, we can hover over any individual upgrade and actually disable it. Why would any sane human being ever consider doing such a thing? Because we want to channel our new power bombs into our arm cannon and fuse one of our beams with the charged explosion. Sounds powerful, right? As you would expect, not a single upgrade or pickup in the game requires you to utilize or even acknowledge the existence of these special attacks. These bonus utility moves, dubbed beam combos or special charge beam attacks, exist solely to add more versatility to power bombs, as we'll be collecting quite a bit of expansions for them throughout the game, much like our missiles, and the average player likely isn't ever going to run out of them anyway. So back on the equipment menu screen, if we disable all but charge and one other beam from our beam window, we will be able to execute this technique. These moves are referred to as beam combos because we will be charging up one specific beam and firing it through the use of a power bomb. At the moment, we can fire 2 beam combos, so let's give them both a whirl. First up, if we disable our ice beam and close the menu, we can select the power bombs and charge our beam. Automatically after reaching a full charge, Samus consumes one power bomb and unleashes a flurry of bolts that temporarily form a deadly spherical shield of energy that then launches upward before dissipating and raining down the resulting discharge like fireworks. This particular technique has been unofficially translated from the Nintendo official guidebook for Super Metroid as Stardust Shower. Even with one of our beams disabled, this is actually a tremendously devastating attack where each particle of energy is dealing damage equivalent to a super missile. With the cost of just one power bomb, we can now effectively make super missiles rain down from the sky. Now what about our ice beam? If we instead disable the Spazer beam and ready the ice beam, we can once again select power bombs and charge our beam to max to find out. Sharp 4-pointed stars of ice orbit Samus, leaving a trail of snow as they slowly spin around her for about 10 seconds. This ice shield is roughly translated to diamond dust, and it's unfortunately much weaker than the other combos, dealing less than a normal missile shot each, though it does last longer. If any of the 4 spinning shurikens strike an enemy, they will instantly freeze, and the particle will be preemptively destroyed. But its only real utility outside of low percent speedruns isn't showing off to your friends that you know how to pull off a secret technique to give Samus a cool ice shield. No pun intended. But the real reason most players won't even stumble across beam combos by happenstance is that they are likely to already have at least 2 beams by this point in the game as we do now, and wouldn't think of disabling them in the first place. Now there is another fascinating and even more convoluted secret ability we can pull off with power bombs, but we're currently low. We can only hold 5 and just dropped 3 testing their utility. So let's head back and scale the swampy scaffold past the respawned zeros. Atop a high ledge is a Kek attack blocking the entrance to a new save room, which we graciously accept. On our way out, we deal with another thorn-spitting cactus and reach a green door. Now before we go inside, aside, I need to make a little admission. I actually lied to you about the name of a past enemy. What I called side hoppers were actually just small side hoppers, and once we pass this door, that'll become all too apparent as two full-grown side hoppers quickly crash their way over to us while stomping across the spiky ceiling unfazed. Just past them, a third is also lying in wait for us. Once the room is clear of imminent threats, we can take in our surroundings. The entire ceiling is coated in those fleshy thorns, and the foreground is draped with dried roots or shriveled vines. Though we stand on a thin metal grate, below us we see 3 Samus Eaters wedged in a thicket, 2 of which contain yapping maws, likely in some sort of symbiotic relationship. Curiously, they can't reach us through the metal grate, meaning there must be a way to destroy it. Dropping bombs reveals that it is all destructible with a power bomb, so we position ourselves where we won't fall victim to the carnivorous wildlife and obliterate the room. The yapping maws survive unfazed, informing us that power bombs can't be used to guarantee victory. Strangely, this didn't reveal any hidden power-ups. Aside from the empty Samus Eater, we should be curious of the 2 lower platforms surrounding it. Risking the irony, we jump inside only to drop through a hidden cavity and find ourselves landing right in front of a power bomb expansion, bringing us to a max capacity of 10. Believe it or not, even if we farmed enemies and restocked all 10 power bombs, we still don't have enough to perform that other secret technique I mentioned earlier. And you thought the beam combos were obscure. Anyway, let's safely retrace our steps out of this room, now made far more treacherous without the metal beam holding the yapping maws at bay. Further up the room, we hit an elevator going up. Leaping aboard, we rise out of the muck and high up into the small mechanical chambers with a yellow door on the ceiling. Luckily, we discovered the power bombs before traveling up this way, so we can now blast open the door and leap topside. Strangely enough, in this cavernous shaft adorned with metallic piping, the music goes back to the lower Brinstar theme, possibly due to our proximity. Above us on the platforms are new green crab enemies called scissors. These menacing 3-eyed crustaceans skitter around ledges like gamers, but take a little more effort to kill. Working our way up, we make our own opening in the ceiling to jump up and into a horizontal cave system with Kai Hunters on either side of us. Heading right leads us to a power bomb door, but we're instantly stopped on the other side. Though there was a tantalizing missile expansion sitting on a distant metallic pedestal, the entire room is flooded with water, making reaching this ledge impossible. If we do try, we fall deep into the waters below, where we'll have to slowly jump back to dry land using the sunken cliffside as leverage. The ceiling does have that familiar Phillips screwhead plus symbol, so we know what that means. We've got to give up and come back later. Turning back, we take on both Kai Hunters in the previous room to enter the blue door on the left side. This takes us through a small tunnel like an encased glass and metal capsule, which itself opens out into the end of the cave system. Taking our first steps outside in what feels like ages, we notice a couple things right away as we begin to climb the floating moss-covered rock formations. 1, the clouds have lifted and it's no longer raining on the surface of Zebes. And 2, the music is no longer the menacing, thunderous, foreboding melody we last heard here. Instead, it's replaced with a triumphant melody that begins quiet and mysterious before it swells with adventure and grandeur. Reaching the top of the hill and with seemingly no other option, we take a leap of faith all the way down the other side of the cliff face, landing, of all places, right in front of our docked spaceship. This is a rare, indescribable moment in gaming that can't be easily replicated. We exhale in relief while soaking in the awe-inspiring atmosphere. Taking this opportunity to restock and save our progress, we begin to appreciate why this environmental tonal shift was so meaningful. The initial storms have faded, our fear and intimidation are gone, and now, standing in our safe haven, we feel empowered by our ability to have come full circle through the dangerous twists and turns of this treacherous planet. It's a wonderful self-contrast that sets up the remainder of our journey perfectly. It's also a rarity to hear music so optimistic after everything we've been through. This is a moment to soak in your accomplishments as a player. Nobody told you a word on how you were supposed to navigate this hostile planet, but you never gave up. You fought and thought and made your way all the way back to Crateria, graduating from the Super Metroid Academy, which can only mean one thing: we've gotta go back. There was still no sign of the Metroid larva anywhere we explored, and with our new power bombs, there's actually a tremendous amount of new things to uncover. So where do you want to go? What places stuck out in your memory the most? This is the magic moment where Super Metroid lets go and allows you to make the remainder of the journey your own. At the close of this chapter in our adventure, I'll take us through a full item roundup with our new gear, but for now, I'll be guiding us along a more direct path towards some important pickups and points of interest. Heading back through Upper Brinstar, we can now take the first door on the right and use Speed Booster to gain enough speed to race through the descending blockades before getting trapped like last time. To be honest, there was another way to get past this, but it involves using an unintended trick dubbed by fans as Mach Ball, where Samus can retain a full running speed while in Morph Ball form. It's a tricky glitch to pull off, but you'll see soon enough why some would insist on trying it here, as it's the only room where this odd glitch movement is useful. To our right is a red door with a new upgrade held by a Chozo statue. At first glance, it appears to be an empty energy tank, and for all intents and purposes, it is. However, this has some nifty utility. This is a reserve tank, a new item for the series. If Samus ever takes lethal damage, instead of dying, this emergency health tank will kick in and heal her one entire energy tank. After one use, however, it becomes useless unless refilled manually at an energy refill station or our ship. Health pickups won't even fill this back up to be used again, so don't think of it as an extra energy tank. It truly is backup just in case of emergencies. Investigating the room reveals a secret morph ball tunnel below the statue, letting out into a thin, mossy green chamber with a missile expansion. But if we're feeling especially curious, we can drop some bombs where the missile expansion was, leading us through a tunnel to a second missile expansion. Rewarded for our curiosity, we merrily backtrack out of the room, only to find the metal barricades are still locking us on this side of the room. Shooting around, we blow open a path through the ceiling. Taking it, we find a metal hallway running parallel to the speed booster trap below. However, this one's filled with side hoppers and erratic waivers. But at the end, we find a powerful upgrade, a super missile expansion. As soon as we touch it, we fall through a pitfall block, hidden tunnel, and then another pitfall block, landing right at the start of this large room. Now you see why some people are willing to learn a complicated morph ball trick just to get past this gate early? Ignoring the reserve tank and 10 bonus missiles, getting the super missiles right at the start of Brinstar technically makes fighting the Spore Spawn optional. Mach Ball just became an integral trick for any Super Metroid speedrunner. Heading back to the main room and dropping to the bottom, we can now destroy the power bomb blocks we discovered earlier. The poor Zila cluing us into this destructible floor gets blown to smithereens as we power bomb our way down and through the single tile hole, dropping into a tall vertical shaft. There's a locked metal door to our right and nothing but scattered platforms as we make our way down to the bottom with a blue door on the left. Taking it, we find ourselves ambushed by a swarm of B-Tom. Out of reflex, we will likely fire at them even knowing they don't take beam weapon damage, but by doing so, we learn that the ice beam does freeze them in place, making defeating them far more manageable. Bombing off the energy-sucking bugs, we continue onwards through the next door, and suddenly we're in a long, thin metal hallway with seemingly nothing of note until we spy an energy tank laying at the end of it. But don't rush forward to nab it, or else you'll fall for one of the game's most despicable traps. If we throw caution to the wind and go for it, we will drop through a hidden hole in the floor right before the energy tank and land deep below with no clear way back up. That's just cruel! The wise thing to do is to not trust this suspiciously generously placed upgrade and instead shoot the floor ahead of us. Watching which shots hit the ground and which ones keep moving clues us into this trick before we fall for it. Not sure what Samus actually sees from her perspective for her to actually trip and fall through something like this, but I digress. Knowing where the hidden blocks are, we can make an informed running jump to nab the energy tank and crack open the green door just beyond it. Perhaps out of remorse for that devilish trick, we get a bonus room awarding us with a super missile expansion. That false floor trick was mean and they knew it. Speaking of mean, the game is about to play one of its most brilliant tricks on us. Dropping through the trap hole for real, we hit some pitfall blocks on the way down, sealing us inside of a deeper, overgrown section of the jungle. To our right is a thin, thorn-capped opening we might barely squeeze through in morph ball form, and to our left is a blue door. Naturally, you'll check the blue door first, discouraged by the spiky tunnel. Inside is possibly the best place save station in the game. Why? You'll see very soon. Rolling under the thorns, the room opens out into a spike-ridden B-Tom nest. Before we can even unroll from Morph Ball, a nearby B-Tom latches onto us. Once it's defeated, we unroll to take in the dangers ahead. With endless thorns above and below, our only way to navigate this room is by delicately executing short hops between the tiny floating platforms. As we make our way, we occasionally get attacked by more B-Tom, as well as dodge endless streams of Zebo emerging from their pipes. This is a great opportunity to show showcase the utility of the Ice Beam. Killing these enemies only spawns new ones to appear, but freezing them in place effectively shuts down their hazard entirely, so we can instead focus on making it all the way to the right to the blue door. Past it, we run into an immediate dead end, where the room only continues upwards without any platforms. Aside from the bulbous red flowers, the real oddity in this room is the small group of chirping, non-hostile creatures known as Edicoons. They resemble monkeys with huge fox-like ears and alien antennae. These fluffy little guys are green in the game, but are blue in their concept art. Samus will never harm the Edicoons. Even if we aim and fire, they will take no damage, as the shots pass them right by. Samus is probably still responding to our inputs, but intentionally missing these harmless, gentle creatures. As soon as we enter the room, the Edicoons will collectively sing the item acquisition sound effect. This cute little fourth wall breaking imitation is intended to clue us in that we are about to acquire something important. The Edicoons then begin jumping up the walls by leaping from side to side across the narrow gap and climbing the shaft without the use of platforms. By following their lead, we jump towards the wall and jump again while pulling away from it. Lo and behold, we can wall kick. This is a genius new implementation to the series, allowing curious players insight into a hidden technique that will be useful all over the map. In fact, having prior knowledge on how to execute wall kicks could have gotten us loads of upgrades early. I'm honestly quite relieved to finally talk about it after passing up so many places where I personally wall kick to access. Thanks to our new furry friends, we reach a high ledge on the left side. The room continues upward, but we can still bomb where we are to reveal a hidden tunnel that leads us left and back to the room before the energy tank trick floor. So if you fell for it the first time, this is your chance to take another lap and give it a go. Now let's talk about why that save station placement was so important. Instinctively, you have no reason to pass up a save station, so you're likely going to take it. But by doing so, you have just committed to learning wall kicks. The game forces you to execute at least one wall kick in order to make it to that first ledge to bomb your way out. Players who refuse to do so or struggle with the timing will likely not resort to resetting the game to teleport Samus back to her last save station to escape the educational trap, because their last save station was locking them into the trap. Getting to this point, it isn't worth starting the whole game over just to escape either. This was a genius way to guarantee that players understood the message and executed the hidden technique to escape the room, much like any other Chozo statue in the game. But this one was instead revealing an ability we didn't even realize we had. Back in the Edicoon room, if we continue to wall kick up, taking advantage of the occasional notch in the left wall to catch our fall if need be, we can reach the top left platform where a small opening on the right wall is visible. However, it's up high and only the size of our morph ball. This moment is a leap of faith and confidence. Jumping over the huge ravine we only just scaled, risking falling all the way down just on the off chance that something is inside that tiny hole. If we leap in midair enter morph ball form, we can just barely slide through the hole and emerge right in front of a generous power bomb expansion. The nearby Edicoon, who only just clued us into this little nook in the wall by making the leap himself, jumps for joy at the sight of Samus understanding what it was trying to tell her. So cute. Heading back, we have no choice but to fall back down the pit, while kicking our way back to the summit. Now, let's not understate this climb. The window to perform a wall kick is small, and executing them regularly can be difficult for a first-timer, especially when your only hint is the motions of the Edicoons. This climb was all about observing our environment, testing a hypothesis, and treating our circumstance like a trial to overcome. Reaching the precipice of the cliff for the first time is exhilarating, and that tempting, treacherous morph ball tunnel is our final exam. Having the courage to take this leap, we affirm that we are comfortable wall kicking from this moment on. Standing proudly atop our indomitable anxiety, we head for the top left door with pride. Exiting the room, the door locks behind us, and we realize we are right where we first started this excursion. If this door didn't lock, we could easily make the risky morph ball jump with confidence, considering we could have just rolled back into this main shaft, jumped back up, and tried again. Because of one little lock, you come through this door stronger and empowered, not only by your newfound technique, but by your own perseverance in overcoming what you thought was an insurmountable obstacle. Anyway, I should also mention that by acquiring our third set of power bombs, we now have access to what I believe to be the most obscure ability Samus has ever had in a Metroid game. I'm talking about the Crystal Flash. This is a secret technique passed down to Samus directly through the Chozo, in which she dangerously dangerously exposes herself to the elements in order to have her power suit convert her own ammunition into health reserves. It's considered to be a last resort, as this could easily go awry in unsafe environments. Strangely enough, even though this technique is supposedly Samus's ultimate ace up her sleeve, this is the only game in the entire series where she can perform it. If for some reason you count the Super Smash Bros. Series, Zero Suit Samus's final smash attack in Brawl is visually similar to a Crystal Flash, but the pose is all wrong. So it's a stretch to say the least. Now, why is this ability so obscure? Let's talk about how to even perform it. First of all, you will require a minimum of 10 missiles, 10 super missiles, and 11 power bombs. Yes, 11. Next, you will need to have less than half of a single energy tank left, and nothing in your reserve tanks. Still with me here? Even if we happen to find ourselves in this situation, the game goes on a bit of a health dropping spree in effort to keep us kicking longer, which will actually make getting in this situation outside of a boss room where it is unfeasible even harder. It's pretty much something you'll have to do on purpose if you want to see it at all. This is Samus's last resort, so it shouldn't exactly be something we can just willingly do continuously. That said, if and when you ever find yourself in this situation and have a safe place to perform the Crystal Flash, here's how you go about doing it. Enter Morph Ball form, select and drop a power bomb. Now, hold L, R, down, and X until the explosion has completed its animation. Samus will then float in the air outside of her power suit in a fetal position while glowing intensely, and her health is rapidly filled. If she takes damage during this time, it will drastically lower how much health she will recover due to her vulnerability. It's also likely that executing a Crystal Flash in a dangerous place will instead lead to death. Oddly enough, removing her Varia suit in a hot room does not subject her to the intense climate, nor does she drown when she pulls it off underwater. But any colliding enemy will deal tremendous damage, as you'd imagine. Once the pulsing waves of light complete and Samus's ammunition has been drained by 10 units each, she will return to her power suit safely, landing back on the ground. The Crystal Flash itself consumes 10 of each ammo type, but requires a power bomb to be dropped to initiate the technique, which is why the magic numbers for ammo minimums are 10, 10, and 11. To make this ability even more cryptic, it isn't explained in any way in-game or in the manual. The only hint of its existence lies in the menu's idle attract mode, but that tells us nothing on how to actually perform the trick in the first place. The only reason we even know about its name and lore are due to its reference in the Super Metroid comic, but even this doesn't explain how to perform the technique in-game. Crystal Flash and the beam combos exist to both add extra versatility to power bombs, the new ammunition type of Super Metroid. However, many players are disappointed that Samus collects so many power bombs throughout the game without ever needing that many. Most players also have no idea that these hidden abilities even exist, as neither will be returning in any Metroid game to date. But now you're more informed than most players, even if you've never touched a Super Nintendo controller. With that little diversion attended to, let's continue downwards through Brinstar. Heading to the right, we can now speed booster through this long pink slimy room, but right after crashing through the wall, we accidentally destroy the blocks underneath our feet and plummet a long way down. The walls are too far apart to wall kick back up, and though it's possible to wall kick to and from a single wall if you're quick, the speed booster blocks above us have actually resealed. We have no choice but to head to the left through this new slimy corridor. Along the way, we meet a new helpful creature called a Decora. It looks like a magenta-eyed green and yellow ostrich with a crest-like pompadour. This bodacious buddy of ours is just like the harmless Edecoons we previously encountered, and will be cluing us into yet another hidden technique. The Decora runs back and forth in this long corridor, starting from the far left near its nest containing a large green egg, and rushing all the way to the right side of the room where it crouches down and leaps high off screen. Before we try this out ourselves, let's check the sole room to the left of the Decora nest. Inside is an energy recharge station. It'll be clear why it's here in just a moment. This is another safe space for us to practice and understand a new ability we didn't even realize we had. Mimicking the Decora, we run to the far end of the room, building up speed booster as we go, then crouch to stop ourselves. Samus flashes white as a whirring noise indicates the charge, and jumping will release this pent-up energy, launching us straight up all the way to the top of the room, re-destroying the speed booster blocks along the way. Once we crash into the ceiling, the room rumbles as our own afterimages zip away from our suit. The speed booster blocks reform, allowing us to safely drop back into the corridor above. That was a shine spark. Though there's much more to it, let's just quickly recontextualize what just happened happened and what this means for traversal. If at any point we can build up a speed booster charge, we can Shine Spark, jumping in a devastating flash of light, decimating anything in our path. Even the after images deal tremendous damage. If you were underwhelmed by the Crystal Flash, then this just became Samus's greatest ability, and thankfully returns in several games after this point. However, unlike some of its later iterations, if we Shine Spark in Super Metroid, we do so at the cost of our own HP, constantly draining until we collide with something. This is likely due to Samus undergoing the extreme G-forces she surely experiences while rocketing around. This is why there was an energy refill station near the Decora, to ensure that escape didn't put Samus at risk of death while practicing a new move. Additionally, she isn't limited to vertical Shine Sparks. Samus can also Shine Spark horizontally and even diagonally, but these require quick directional button inputs between pressing jump and Samus committing to the direction. She can also Shine Spark mid-air by doing a spin jump after charging the speed booster, and then quickly pressing jump and the chosen direction. Keep in mind that if you want to Shine Spark diagonally, you will need to hold R in order to point your gun at this angle. You're probably used to aiming with R for angles anyway, so this is likely already second nature. If you're feeling a bit intimidated by the prospect of having to perform these tricky jumps, don't. You will never actually need to perform a Shine Spark to clear the game. It's just a bonus utility to help you reach places early and creatively tinker with the environmental design of the game on an even deeper level. You're probably already imagining shenanigans that speedrunners get up to with this ability, and I promise you can do some incredible stuff through Shine Sparking. And honestly, just doing the simple vertical jump by crouching and pressing B is more than enough to help you nab some extra pickups early. It's also interesting to note that with precise timing and aim, we can actually Shine Spark out of this tunnel in such a way that we inadvertently free the Decora below, as it zips through our opening in the ceiling before the blocks reform. This wasn't exactly intended, as the poor thing fruitlessly attempts to follow the same predetermined path and continues demonstrating Shine Sparks in the room above. Good thing this comically malfunctioning code is distracting us from how we just permanently separated a parent from its unborn child. Oops. Anyway, after concluding our informative little diversions with the helpful Zebezian animals, we make our way back towards the molten depths of the planet. As we descend down the opening shaft of Norfair, our eyes lock on the yellow door on our left we've had to routinely pass. Powerbombing our way inside reveals it as the map room for Norfair, which clearly displays for us the critical path utilizing our new power bombs. Remember that speed booster blockade room just above us? The small footstool trap at the end of that corridor stopped us mid-sprint to call attention to the powerbomb blocks on the floor, and our new map just confirmed that this leads to a long series of unexplored tunnels. Norfair is a literal hotbed of brilliant breadcrumbing that naturally weaves players in, out, and all around its artfully interlinked channels, and we haven't even seen the half of it yet. Powerbombing the blocks in the speed booster tunnel drops us into a cave system below with a few Desgiga along with a flurry of new swarming insects called Mela. These creatures look and behave similar to Criteria's Mellow, but instead spout flames from their backs. Without any discernible wings, these creatures likely utilize the extreme heat of Norfair to fly through some sort of biological heat ventilation system. Now, I'll warn you right now, this next room on our left is absolutely despicable. The moment we enter, we see we're in a tall vertical red and black rocky shaft, and if we happen to fire our beam forward at this very moment, we reveal possibly the meanest placed pickup in the entire game. There is a missile expansion lodged in the wall directly in front of us. Why is this so cruel? Just try and go get it. As soon as we take a single step, we start dropping through pitfall blocks, and even if we manage to land on another platform, it also instantly erodes beneath our feet. In fact, all 10 platforms in this room are fake, even the ones with Sovas crawling around them. Hitting rock bottom, we realize that there is no way back up that tall cliffside, and we once again fell right into another trap. What makes this worse than last time is the tease of a missile expansion we won't be able to collect for quite some time. If we either knew of this trick in advance or were very talented with wall kicking, we can still nab this upgrade now. But as I've implied before, we can also jump on pitfall blocks precisely on the frame we first touch them and before they disappear, which if done correctly can make grabbing this expansion much easier. Either reluctantly or in cheeky success, we head through the blue door on the right and find ourselves in a long open flat tunnel with no enemies in sight, encouraging us us to run. Picking up speed, we flash into Speed Booster right as actual enemies appear, and we destroy them instantly upon impact, not even breaking stride. We crash through more red space pirates and multi-violas than we can count before smashing through Speed Booster blocks, over a pitfall block spike bridge, and force our way through the next room. Before we investigate the green door on the floor, our map tells us that we're right under a save station. Leaping up, we freeze a couple red cack attacks and save our progress. Sure, we could try the other blue doors, but colored doors usually lock away the good stuff, so we break open the super missile door on the floor and fall into a long, horizontal, rocky purple corridor. The boss music we heard when battling Kraid begins as the door above us locks us inside. Taking just a few steps to the right, we find an enormous 8-eyed red crocodilian sludge monster with 4 legs, 2 long clawed forearms, and a beak-like avian face. Its disturbingly pale eyes seem glazed over with cataracts that all blink in unison. This is Crocomire. The colossal reptile is nearly the height of the room itself, making passing him impossible without unintended clipping. If we instead leave this moderately docile beast alone and head left, we will find ourselves blocked by a huge wall of spikes. Returning to Crocomire, we have only one choice. We must push him backward to avoid being crushed as he slowly crawls towards us. Crocomire will flail his arms around trying to scratch at us before bellowing loudly, revealing a flapping, slimy yellow tongue catching our attention. And this is our clue on how to fight back. By firing into the Croc's mouth, he will recoil backwards a bit based on the damage dealt by the impact. Truthfully, Crocomire has no HP, and dealing higher damage is only incentivized by him flinching backwards further. Our goal isn't to defeat this creature, it's to survive a mortal reverse game of tug-of-war. If we fail to push Crocomire back, he will continue to inch closer and closer to us until eventually crushing us against a spiked wall. And the more hits Crocomire takes, the more agitated he becomes, speeding up his attempts to charge us. One thing you should absolutely never do in this encounter is drop a power bomb. This is our first boss fight after acquiring them, so many players may have the misplaced confidence to try and blow Crocomire to smithereens. Unfortunately, Crocomire is completely invulnerable to all of our known weaponry except through direct shots in the mouth, and a power bomb in particular just makes him incredibly mad, speeding up his assault considerably. I should point out that fans of film history might recognize Crocomire's roar, another aspect of Kraid that the two beasts share, although Kraid's roar was at a much lower pitch. This is actually a stock sound effect commonly heard in monster movies like the 1976 remake of King Kong. Anyway, as we push back Crocomire's assault, he becomes more and more enraged, changing up his timing for revealing his open mouth and raking his claws more violently across the room. He will also attempt to pelt us with orbs of plasma spat from his mouth. These aid him twofold, one in damaging Samus and throwing off her momentum, but also in taking the hit from her missiles, blocking them from reaching Crocomire's mouth. Towards the end of the room, Crocomire will begin faking out Samus by opening his mouth and shutting it quickly before pausing and actually roaring. As his desperation increases, we can spy a change in the room on the right side. There are silver blocks on the ceiling, but more importantly, Crocomire is running out of room. He slowly backs up onto a thin, crumbling precipice where it suddenly gives way and the huge beast splashes into a boiling pit of bright yellow hydrochloric acid. Steam billows out of the toxic soup as Crocomire fruitlessly thrashes about trying to claw his way to safety, while his skin and flesh melt away, leaving nothing but bones to sink down into the bubbling deep. And if we watch carefully, we can see a trail of rolling bubbles quickly flow past us to the left as the remaining bones are swept away by subterranean currents. Wow. If that wasn't the most gruesome thing you've ever seen in a first-party Nintendo game, then you're probably lying. We didn't just defeat Crocomire, we shoved him into a boiling acid bath and watched him struggle as his entire body corroded away while he was still alive. This creature didn't even preemptively attack us. We invaded its home and slaughtered it in the most hideous way imaginable as it did nothing but defend itself from our onslaught. We don't even know if Crocomire was tied to the space pirates, much less possessed higher intelligence. What if this was just a docile, oversized salamander native to the planet? Sure, it could have been another biological experiment by the pirates, or even a morbid pet of some sort contained in this dungeon of an enclosed prison, but we don't know. All we know for sure is that it's very much dead, and it is undeniably our fault. And for the reason we do know this is acid and not magma. One, due to its color and how it'll eat us alive even if we wore the final suit in the game, and two, because that's what this pit is described as in the Nintendo official guidebook for Super Metroid. Poor Crocomire. Well, there doesn't look to be any way across this apparently deadly acid pit, so we turn around to find the door is still locked above us. We proceed further left to the spike wall when the boss music kicks up again. The entire room shakes violently and the entire wall is blown apart. Suddenly the bones of Crocomire reach out toward us as we brace for some sort of haunted skeletal round 2 with the beast. It lands in front of us and crumbles into dust, leaving no trace behind but its massive baked skull and an assortment of refilling pickups. Somehow, when it got swept away, the bones must have gotten clogged in some sort of geyser and shot up against this wall from the other side. As morbid as this whole event was, that was a pretty amusing gag. Now we don't feel so horrible about what we just did to Crocomire and instead can laugh it off with a bizarre dark fake-out. Supposedly early designs of Crocomire had him appearing cuter and less menacing, and players actually felt really guilty about killing him. So this skeletal joke was implemented alongside his design shift into what we now recognize in order to lessen this side effect of indiscriminate murder. There's also a couple things to note about the skeleton itself. First of all, they forgot to give it 4 sets of legs, and his pelvis wouldn't work to accommodate this missing set of limbs. Let's just say they got eaten up and washed away in the current, and not mistakenly omitted by the designers. Secondly, this skull became an iconic and memorable part of Super Metroid, and other games would homage it by hiding this skull in their levels, like Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance and Donkey Kong Country Returns. Crocomire's death scene is also likely the source of inspiration for Dry Bowser from the Super Mario series. To animate Bowser's fall into the lava pits from a bridge, similarly to how we did on the NES, New Super Mario Bros. For the DS showed what this would actually look like on modern hardware. And his struggle for survival looks awfully reminiscent of Crocomire's demise, even going so far as to create Dry Bowser as a new skeletal incarnation of Bowser to help keep the event as kid-friendly as possible. Moving past the skull, we make our way to the left of the room, jumping between a few thin, rocky footstools above the acid. Passing the blue door, we enter a large open cavern and drop down inside near a pit of gamuts, which we can exploit to restock our lost health and ammunition. There's more to this room, but we can't quite make the jumps. There is a patrolling ripper near the ceiling, and a suspensor platform helping us make it out if we needed. Checking behind us, we are fortunate to find another save station. After updating our logs, we pass the gamut nest and drop through the blue door on the floor. We land on a rocky outcropping, leading immediately to another door on our left, but on the other side, we're impeded by a green blockade door with the lock on the other side. Heading back, we drop down, way down, until we finally start seeing some platforms orbited by more violas. Taking the first door we see on the right, we enter into a serpentine hilly room with acid raising and lowering like a flooding tide. We can see a couple meteries up ahead, so to avoid the room's traps, we wait for the acid to drop and speed booster through the windy room and bump into a wall with a tunnel below. Rolling through, we see gamuts emerging from the acid somehow, so we freeze them and attempt to hop between the shallow platforms just low enough for the acid to eat away at our ankles when it rises. There are spiked platforms between each jump as well, but by daintily hopping across the gap, we collect a missile expansion at the end of the cave. Working our way safely back to the viola pit, we drop down again to another door on the floor. There's a small swarm of Mela to our left and a bunch of blocks on the ground stacked like debris. Defeating the Mela, we reach a small tunnel which we can only roll through. Just past it, we can now see a large ramp pointing out toward a huge vat of acid. In the background, there are large crumbling support beams, and the ones by the ramp in particular are angled, collapsing in such a way that clues us into what we need to do to progress. Jumping across the tiny platforms above the acid gets us nowhere, so instead we backtrack and bomb the tunnel, only to discover that these are speed booster blocks, confirming our suspicion that this is indeed a massive ramp that we will need to launch ourselves with in order to clear the acid lake. Unfortunately, we don't have enough room to build the charge, so we bomb the debris back by the door and realize it's all destructible by power bombs. Blasting them away, we can now build up speed booster, crash through the tunnel blocks, and jump at the end of the ramp. Samus is sent careening over the enormous acidic vat and lands neatly on an outcropping by a blue door. That was some leap of faith, but it paid off in the end. Heading through the door, we're fortunate to find ourselves standing in front of another Chozo statue inside a metallic room opening out into more dark, rocky caverns in the distance. Shooting it, we graciously accept except the grapple beam. Though it's got beam in the name, don't think of it as such. It is not exactly a tool for combat, though it has its odd uses. Instead, the grapple beam can be selected by cycling to it on the top screen. It then replaces whatever beam systems we have activated. When fired, the grapple beam shoots a mid-range electrical tether that can securely lock onto some enemies and objects, allowing us to swing between them. We can immediately test this by climbing to the top of the room and aiming at the previously useless plus-shaped icon blocks and firing. By holding on, Samus can retract or extend the beam, as well as swing from side to side to build up momentum for a greater jump. These blocks are likely shaped like Phillips screw heads, meant to indicate stability for the grapple beam. Now that we understand the basics of how this new ability works, let's actually backtrack to the past room. Inside, you might have noticed some rippers near the ceiling during our Evel Knievel jump. If we test out our new grapple beam on the rippers, they'll stay locked in place as we swing beneath them, just like the grapple blocks. Unfortunately, the other rippers are still moving, so we need to carefully swing and fire another grapple shot at the next ripper to Spider-Man swing our way across this ravine. At the end of this treacherous excursion, we find a hidden alcove high above the ramp we didn't see previously, hiding a missile expansion. There's a notch in the wall just past it, and by rolling inside, we find ourselves dropping through a hidden tunnel, all the way down through a pitfall block and right back on the ramp below. We will once again have to clear the path in order to make the speed booster leap, but at least we didn't miss out on this rewarding demonstration of the grapple beam. If instead you knew in advance that it was up there, we could have used a well-placed shine spark to launch ourselves right next to the ledge and without the need to backtrack with the grapple beam. Returning to the next room, we climb the wall over the Chozo statue and swing across the grapple blocks to reach the top door. Just past it is another basic test of the grapple beam. We're separated from the far rocky ledge by a pool of water, which we already know hinders our mobility. By swinging over to it instead, we easily clear the obstacle. The next room opens out into a tall metal facility with 3 Funes spitting plasma at us from the walls. Jumping past them, we reach the top platform without any visible way to progress. Considering this is probably another test for the grapple, we jump and fire it straight up and luckily snag some blocks lodged in the ceiling. From here, we can adjust our height and swing to the next door to escape. The next room is a more complicated version of the jump we did over the water. Now the pool below us is far larger, and once we make the leap, we see there's another we must make, and it will involve multiple consecutive grapple jumps to clear. If we happen to fall down into the waters below, we will be swarmed by a flurry of globular new enemies called Puyos. A Puyo can stretch and contort its gelatin-like body in order to jump and swim around, dealing minor contact damage when it connects. These amoeba-like slimes may be the most alien thing we've encountered yet. They have no eyes, no limbs, no bones, and likely no anything that we as a species can even relate to, possibly down to the cellular level. Their name likely originates from the popular puzzle game series Puyo Puyo, where you stack and match colored blobs. Falling down here isn't ideal for combat, as we quickly realize that fighting with the grapple beam isn't practical. It can take out small threats and even pull pickups towards us, but our arm cannon beams are far more potent in terms of damage and range. Climbing back up the left side, we make a successful series of swings across the gap and realize that we're on the other side of the green blockade door from earlier. Shooting it open, we can now exit this tunnel. Using our new grapple beam, we can leap to the suspensor platform and jump to grapple the Ripper rocketing across the ceiling. Swinging for maximum distance, we can reach a new red door, behind which is a small room where 2 fanged statues guard a power bomb expansion. Remember all the extra utility we have with power bombs, on top of simply dropping them for screen wiping damage. Heading back to Crocomyre's lair, we pass the skeletal remains, which have actually moved a bit if you were extremely observant, although I'm not sure it actually means anything. Passing the skull, we can work our way all the way to the right over the acid pit the beast fell into. There are precarious grapple blocks over our head which we carefully swing between to reach the far right of this room, where we graciously acquire a new energy tank. The only way back is by once again grappling across this massive gap. We can circumvent falling in the acid by grappling straight up, pulling ourselves out of the hazard. Back in the center of the room, the lock above our head has been removed, so we leap to emerge topside. Scaling the cliffs once again, we defeat the wild red Kakatax and investigate the blue door at the top. Inside, we see a dragon in the magma pools below, and jumping above, we approach an erratic Garuda. On the ceiling is a series of grapple blocks that lead us towards a high cliffside above the flames below, with a missile expansion just waiting for us. Recognizing our surroundings, we've actually been here before. To our left is a green blockade lock we can open from this side, side, and we previously saw this point when poking our nose in from the other side. Recontextualizing that this leads us back to the opening shaft of Norfair, let's instead double backwards to the other new blue door we passed just to the right of Crocomyre's pit. Inside this long corridor, metal pipes are all that keep us above the magma pools below, where gamuts once again rise through the first pit and fire-spitting dragons in the next two. The room ends with two options, a blue door above and a blue door to the right. Heading upwards just loops us back to another blockade we've approached from the wrong side. However, if we do poke our nose ahead, we may discover the weakness of the thought-to-be indestructible silver gamers circling the rocky platforms. With just one little zap with the grapple beam, these little pests instantly burst. Now, instead of accidentally locking ourselves out, let's instead take the right door. We pass through an energy refill station, which would definitely come in handy for those struggling with Crocomyre, but the room past this is a horrible death trap. There are no platforms to speak of, and nothing but grapple blocks on the ceiling to support us over a large magma pit below, comically lined with spikes, just to make sure that you knew that falling down would be dangerous. Taking the leap, we must continuously swing across the three devilishly placed yapping maws hiding in the inferno below. Once we safely reach the door at the end, we arrive in a tiny space with another blockade we can open. Let's take this one, as we can't immediately see where it leads. Shooting the barricade, we head to the right in what looks like a dead end and roll into a narrow, hidden morph ball tunnel, which spits us out into another cavern we've already seen. However, this time we have the ability to open the power bomb door at the room's basin. Blasting it open, we head inside and find ourselves in a molten inferno. There is a magma pit below, and unsettling fangs protruding from the ceiling and ground. Leaping the pit, we have to use our morph ball to weasel our way through a fang-ridden tunnel that eventually dead ends. However, it also reveals two important things. One, there is a pocket of the room below us if we could just cross the magma, and two, it exits through a massive familiar maw. There is an enormous statue of Ridley's face, intimidating us to stay away lest we submit to becoming swallowed by the beast itself, metaphorically and literally. This is Ridley's lair, and we will need to find a way into this abominable place in order to recapture the last Metroid. Unfortunately, we must retreat for now and continue exploring with our new abilities, which luckily will award us with quite a lot of goodies. One such place we should revisit is a few rooms above us, where we once picked up a missile expansion past a pit complicated with Fune and suspensor platforms. We can now grapple across the gap in order to make this leap over the spiky floor to reach the tantalizing red door at the end. Truthfully, I never wait this long to enter this room, and personally go here even before nabbing the speed booster. How? With knowledge of wall kicking, we can bypass the grapple check by making a running jump toward the far edge and wall kicking our way up. It's a surprisingly easy trick to perform, but you'll only know about it upon replay, so that's why we didn't utilize it sooner. Anyway, however we enter the red door on the right, we emerge into a rocky Chozo statue room, holding another new power-up for us. Before we collect it, I should point out something I previously passed over. This is a beam weapon, and like all other beam weapons in the game, minus the grapple, it is depicted by a small colored creature somehow holding a colored orb with the first letter of the beam itself. It's an incredibly weird thing that the original game did, and the series continues to honor this bizarre style even to this day. Are the beam weapons somehow biological? What's with the orbs? And why do they blatantly have English letters prominently printed on them? I have absolutely no idea. Let your imagination run wild with that one. Anyway, collecting the little snake thing eating the letter W reveals it to be the wave beam. This also stacks with our ice and spacer beams, now upgrading our shots to deal extra damage and, more importantly, penetrate through walls. This allows us to do things like defeat enemies without entering their line of sight or opening blue barricades from the opposite side. The wave beam also grants us a new beam combo called Asteroid Belt. Biting my lip before I once again rant about how that doesn't make any sense, this is actually one of the best beam combos. By disabling all but our charge and wave beam, we select power bombs and charge away. At max, 4 large purple orbs akin to energy refill pickups begin to orbit Samus in a waving cross-shaped pattern. If we move around during their deployment, we can manipulate their arcs to become more chaotic and crash into nearby enemies. Nifty, but once again not mandatory in any way to utilize. Heading backwards, we grapple across the gap and demonstrate the wave beam's capabilities by shooting open the barricades button from the opposite side. But if we came here before nabbing the grapple beam or otherwise fell into the spiked pit below, we will instead discover the secret alternate exit to this room. The spikes spikes in the middle of this pit are fake, as are the ones on the far left. This is to ensure the player doesn't actually become trapped down here, and will drop them to safety whether they made a leap of faith landing in the middle, or hugged the left wall hoping for a safe retreat. The developers knew that it was possible to acquire upgrades in ways they couldn't anticipate, so these clever security measures help protect the game's encouragement for exploration. Moving back up the cave system, we re-emerge into the green orb room and grapple the ceiling to swing across the gap to reach a new super missile door. Inside the small room following, we are immediately dive-bombed by a Garuda. Once the threat is eliminated, we can see a missile expansion amidst the magma-filled green orb room after a single footstool in the magma. Not trusting that this is all this room has in store for us, we shoot the wall, revealing a morph ball-sized opening high in the wall with no clear way to access it. Sure, we could jump and enter morph ball quickly, but there's an even safer way to get up there. If we happen to fire down towards the bottom left corner of the room, our wave beam will activate a secret elevator platform that raises up level with the tunnel. Simply hop aboard and roll through the hidden passageway leading towards another door at its end. Strangely enough, when we enter the next room, a Sova falls from the ceiling and lands on a tiny platform in front of us. The room has a large magma pool with a dragon spitting fire at us. There's only a few scattered single block step stools to make our way across this room, decorated with more of those purple fangs we only just saw for the first time near Ridley's lair. Heading left, we deal with two more Sovas dripping from the ceiling as we approach, and dragons complicating our jumps. All the way to the left, we find our second reserve tank perched on a rocky outcropping. Luckily, exploring this dangerous hidden room was fruitful, but it's not done yet. As we turn around and try to shoot the nearest Sova off the platform to make our first jump back, we inadvertently destroy the block alongside it, revealing another missile expansion. What a clever trick they just pulled to instigate us into accidentally finding this goodie. Well, with this room looted, let's continue wrapping up collecting items with our current gear. Heading back to Brinstar, we can re-enter Kraid's lair and examine the thorny Kai Hunter room. If we power bomb the far right side above the tunnel, we destroy some blocks above and to the right of us, leading to a missile expansion. Problem is, the tunnel is aligned with the ceiling, so jumping will be very difficult. We could nab this easily later with another upgrade, but we're skilled enough with bomb jumping to ascend ourselves just enough to slide inside and collect the power-up. Once we do, we drop through some pitfall blocks and land back in the tunnel to the save room. This completes Kraid's little hideaway, so there is no need to return here any longer. Backtracking through the glass underwater tube connecting us to Lower Brinstar, we might be inclined to try dropping a power bomb to make it outside. And once we do, the entire glass chamber rattles, cracks, and bursts from the pressure. Immediately, we are flooded with water as glass shards scatter around us. We can't do much here now other than drop down to a new save room, but at least we just found what's basically the back door to Meridia. We should return here once we have the ability to traverse in water. From here, we head back up the chasm where we needed to freeze rippers in order to climb. There's a power bomb door to the left that we passed before, and by dropping one, we open the path towards the door, open the door itself, and defeat the B-Tom to our right in one blast. The B-Tom also generously restocks our power bomb. Inside, we find ourselves in another long chamber lit by fire fleas, and similarly to last time, there are narrow platforms and spike hazards to avoid while dodging the fire fleas themselves. This room is much longer than the last time we encountered these little guys, and darkness will only make it even more challenging. There are even spikes in the ceiling occasionally, as well as waivers suddenly throwing off our calculated jumps. Eventually, we reach an impasse where the ground drops off into a deep, empty ravine, and grapple blocks become our only means of traversing onwards. This is why I didn't navigate us towards this room earlier, even though we previously passed this door with the means to open it. If you can believe it, I'm actually aiming to save time during our meticulously guided tour. After swinging past another fire flea, the ground below us comes within sight, but it is nothing but spikes. Continuing to swing onwards, we are forced to dodge yapping maws on top of the waivers, all nipping and smacking into us along what is probably the longest grapple challenge in the game. Finally, at the end, we land near a red door and open it up. Inside a metallic item room, we see no way forward, so we begin bombing around and accidentally activate an elevator, aligning us with a small tunnel forward, which drops us through a pitfall block and right in front of a new Chozo statue. And the item this one is holding is unlike any other. We've just acquired the X-ray scope. You were probably asking yourself at least once on our journey thus far, how on earth would you have known that was hidden there? Well, my friends, if neurotic morph ball bombing wasn't your thing, allow me to introduce you to your new favorite toy. The X-ray scope is an optional item that is activated on the top screen with select. When in use, it replaces our run button to freeze Samus in place, as well as enemies and hazards, by the way, where she will project a searchlight of sorts through her visor, scanning the environment. While holding B and aiming around the room, we can see through hidden blocks and reveal any hidden secrets or traps. This new ability to the Metroid series is absolute genius, and strangely enough, will never make a return to the series as of 2023, not counting Metroid Prime's X-ray visor, which technically accomplishes a similar task but in a 3D space. In terms of programming, this ability to freeze time and peer through the layers of the game's foreground and background is incredible. It is achieved by the system quickly replacing assets based on which part of the screen Samus reveals through her visor. It's a really satisfying effect, making us feel like detectives uncovering the secrets of the world. Now nothing will escape our notice. But remember to unequip it for combat, as you can't run when the scope is active. As any good Metroid upgrade room does, escaping it requires some tinkering with our newly acquired power. Taking a look around, we spy a destructible block above the Chozo statue leading down a hidden tunnel and around the room, ultimately letting back out onto the other side where we can escape. By bombing our way out and rolling through this tunnel, we drop another bomb and activate another elevator, where we can roll to the right and drop back into the front of the room. This room is designed to make us feel like we have the power to figure out even the most obscure puzzles and uncover all of Zebes' secrets, and we absolutely do. Now, before we wrap up this enormous chapter in Samus' journey, let's finish looting our way back up through Brinstar and Crateria. Climbing back to the blue barricade that locked us in Lower Brinstar, we can now shoot it open from the wrong side using the wave beam. In the same room, pay attention to the pipes high on the walls. Some shoot gigas, but others appear unused. Making a high jump to the ceiling, we can actually slide inside one of these pipes, leading to a missile expansion. Knowing where it is, we can now access it early in another run by wall kicking to reach this ledge instead. Higher still, we jump to reach a new power bomb door on a green outcropping. For the sake of efficiency, let's actually return here in just a moment after we finish looting the rest of Brinstar that we're familiar with. Back in the giant pink slime room, we climb the structures to reach the first yellow door we ever saw. Finally, with the ability to blow it open, we drop a power bomb and head inside, where we are immediately pounced upon by a family of side hoppers, 2 small and 1 full grown. The doors actually lock until this group is slain as well. They attacked us first, but we did just invade their territory. With no choice, we kill the bipedal beasts and investigate the room. Floating high over our heads in this seemingly empty room is a solitary grapple block. Latching on, we swing around but don't see anywhere else to grapple to. Instead, we must swing around and completely land on top of this single floating tile block so we can fire towards the blue locked barricade, where wave beam is once again mandatory to open the lock on the other side. If we happen to miscalculate our jump and fall, we will land on a strange protrusion in the corner covering a couple of spikes. Making the mistake of trying to bomb through the wall instead exposes the spikes, turning the grapple leap into a new accidental hazard of our own creation. Once we shoot the lock and swing through the opening, we can now progress through the flashing door on the other side, leading us to a small metal enclosure awarding us with an energy tank. To make it back out of the past room, we will need to shoot or bomb the far floor, activating an elevator platform, raising us back up to the barricade. Once we redefeat the Sidehopper crew, we can emerge back into the large pink slime room, ready for our next goodie. A little higher up, we reach the grapple block lined ceiling above the Sidehopper trap we previously fell into. This time, we swing across the ravine to reach a missile expansion high on the far ledge. Though we could have accessed this earlier in hindsight with wall kicks, there's more to this corner we wouldn't have been able to access at that point. Directly below us is a wall of power bomb blocks, which are blocking entry to an exit of pitfall blocks below. The power bomb check should clue us in that there is more to this spot, and our X-ray scope reveals that the left wall is false. Hopping through, we emerge on the other side of a locked door with 2 full-sized side hoppers and a series of spikes protruding from the floor. Taking them out, we investigate this room before leaving. Every seemingly empty room has held secrets so far, so we bomb the single pink block in the ground that appears out of place, unconnected to the others. It turns into a super missile block, which we blast open and drop into and fall through a pitfall block right in front of a new power bomb expansion. From here, the X-ray scope will come in handy in revealing a hidden corridor below us we can access from the left side of the room. Shooting the wall, we raise an elevator barrier, and by bombing the new exposed ground, we drop through some pitfall blocks to reach the tunnel. Once it dead ends, we drop another bomb, activating another elevator platform, raising us up to a tiny opening, leading us to the blue door on the right. As soon as we take it, we drop through pitfall blocks and plummet a long way back into the huge pink room. That door we exited from was visible before, making sure that we suspected that powerbomb wall above even more so that we could find it naturally by inquisitive map investigation. Since this naturally turned us around, let's return to that powerbomb door we just passed in the green gigapipe room. Inside, you might be surprised to see an atmospheric shift into blue rocky caverns, but even more so to be suddenly rushed by 3 huge side hoppers. These creatures are brutes and all take some punishment before falling. Once the rim is secure, we whip out the X-ray scope to spy a vulnerability in the east cave wall. Bombing through lets out into another rocky enclosure housing a powerbomb expansion. X-ray scoping further, we can detect powerbomb blocks along the right side. Dropping one, the entire right wall crumbles into a large channel for us to traverse, leading us right back to a nostalgic spot, the pedestal that once held our very first upgrade, the morph ball. The camera is gone, but the creepy faces still glow with the haunting red light. Moving to the right, we head to the next room over and notice that gamers have begun prowling the environment. Passing them by, the next room has more gamers and even some screes, as it once did in Metroid 1. There's also now a Rio down by where the second camera was positioned. The cameras must have been removed by the pirates for some specific purpose. They've likely given up on this area, considering it lost to Samus, and instead retreated further into the planet. As we shoot the erratic flying Rio, we will likely fire upwards and stumble across the most hidden energy tank in the entire game, lodged in the ceiling. This may seem random and obscure, but this placement is actually a deliberate reference to the original game, which had some downright despicable energy tank placements, one of which was in this very spot lodged in the ceiling in Brinstar. With our high jump boots, we can nab the power up, further beefing up our chunky defenses. Though we can identify some power bomb blocks to the right over a collapsed tunnel, I'll warn you now that we aren't fully equipped to head upward through that hidden shaft that it conceals just yet. Instead, let's work our way back up through Mother Brain's old container and into the original escape route. There is a single tile of blue pipework near the bottom right of the shaft that we should find a bit off. Bombing it opens a narrow pathway to a new yellow door encased with intrusive metal piping, almost as if we just entered a ventilation shaft. Blasting it open, we enter into a long metal corridor of pipes that emerge from a vat of acid below. Progressing through this long hallway, we eventually approach the only presence of life inside, a series of buoyants bouncing in and out of the corrosive liquid in between the only gaps in the pipes. Knocking into one accidentally will trip Samus into the acid below, so we carefully make our way past only to find that the room dead ends. However, the ceiling at the far right continues upward a long way. Attempting to wall kick won't lead to any results as the shaft is too high, demanding a shine spark. In order to build up speed to make the jump, we first must use the ice beam to freeze the buoyants in place when they align with the floor, allowing us to dash across them. Taking advantage of this limited window, we build up speed and shine spark up the long shaft and through some speed booster blocks in the ceiling. These would have blocked us from attempting to wall kick our way up had we the tenacity to even attempt that impressive climb. Topside, we now see a super missile expansion to our right. Collecting the upgrade, we now work our way left as the ground beneath us has sealed shut. Rolling through the narrow opening on the left side, we emerge in a long, large hallway with grapple blocks on the ceiling and nothing but spikes beneath us for as far as we can see. Good thing we didn't backtrack as soon as we got the speed booster, as we would have had to just suck it up and run through the spikes below, hoping for the best. Instead, we swing our way out of the room, reaching the blue door at the far end. On the other side, the metal pipes narrow in on us and we must bomb our way out, exiting us back into the escape tunnel we entered from, but now at the very top by the elevator. We've now come full circle to and from Norfair, leading us back to our ship on the surface. But before we take a well-earned breather from this long winding stretch of our mission, it would be insightful to head back to the dark, foreboding room housing the menacing golden statue. Once we step inside, the music returns to a sinister, ominous tone as the eye of Kraid's statue flashes green and shatters. Kraid's once golden statue fades to gray as a small apparition flies from its eye as if speedily escaping its prison. Whatever just happened was clearly linked to Kraid's defeat, and with 3 remaining statues unfazed, this can only mean one thing. This bizarre device is a massive lock, one that will only give way after these 4 creatures are all put down, causing something important to happen here. It must be Space Pirate in design, with 2 of the known figures being Space Pirate elites. This This explains the bizarre biomechanical nature of the statue, but what about that spirit that just left it? Was some ethereal entity trapped within this elaborate lock for some purpose necessary for its operation? Are there others trapped inside the rest of the statues as well? Was this one we just freed directly linked to Kraid's spirit somehow? Through the uncertainties, one thing is clear. Something extremely important is locked away here, and it just might be the space pirate stronghold where the Metroid larva is being held captive. Returning to our ship with reinvigorated purpose, our path has become clear. Samus must seek and destroy the remaining space pirate leaders to prevent an imminent galactic cataclysm. This recent stretch of her journey was a tangled subterranean spelunking through an interwoven labyrinth. Diving in and out of Norfair has been laborious, but also undeniably fruitful. Samus has now acquired the unstoppable speed booster, the hazard-freezing ice beam, the recklessly potent power bombs, the emergency backup health reserve tanks, the electric lasso tethering grapple beam, the unstoppable penetrating wave beam, and the sleuthing X-ray scope, laying the secrets of the world bare. By tinkering with her new abilities, Samus has also recently discovered the various beam combos Stardust Shower, Diamond Dust, and Asteroid Belt. Learning from the local fauna, Samus can now execute wall kicks and shine sparks just by utilizing her existing equipment. And lastly, Samus has become sufficiently powered up with regular and super missile expansions as well as power bombs to utilize the ace up her sleeve inherited by the powerful Chozo who raised her, the Crystal Flash. Prior to this stretch of her journey, the world was cleverly designed to give the illusion of being open and free, when in actuality it was brilliantly guiding Samus along a predetermined critical path. But now that we've intimately explored the ins and outs of Brinstar and Norfair, we've come to realize that we have been conditioned to discover the path forward on our own without the need for tutorialized breadcrumbing. Our journey throughout Zebes is Samus's journey. Her discoveries are ours, and our achievements are hers. We struggle together, fight together, and investigate together. By reaching this point as a human being holding a video game controller, you are no longer just controlling Samus. This isn't a book or a movie. It's a video game. You take control and responsibility for Samus's actions. Her discoveries and successes are yours, as your failures become hers. The game at this point has its faith in you to overcome any obstacle it throws your way, and from here on out, it's certainly going to try its best to defeat your iron determination. But reaching this point at all means that you are not easily defeated. When others saw a dead end, you never gave up and kept pushing further. Every single movement of Samus's was your own. She succeeded thus far because you did. No, you are no longer controlling Samus. You are Samus. Wow, well, I hope you've enjoyed this feature-length presentation of Super Metroid Experience Chapter 4. This ended up being a little bit longer than I expected when I started out for this part, but honestly, I think this narratively is the best conclusion for a beginning and end of this chapter of Samus's journey. It just happens to be a very large and eventful segment of Samus's journey. And I had a lot of fun making it, even though it ended up being enormous. It's my goal in this series to provide some sort of infectious obsession of mine for hopefully you to latch onto and become fascinated with, or enraptured in, just interested, and just altogether there and gripped into content that you otherwise might not have even known existed, much less looked into this much detail. I'm taking full advantage of my autism to provide you some sort of intensely analyzed version of this brilliantly designed video game. So I certainly hope that it has been an insightful journey that we are sharing together through Super Metroid. I had a lot of fun with this one. There's a lot of stuff that we had to do. I had to actually split this up into 6 parts just so that my computer could actually render this. So, yeah, the next segment is not nearly this long, so it's probably not going to take anywhere near as long as it took for making this segment, but it will be coming soon. I am hard at work on these. Just because you see a long break in the uploads does not mean that I am not making them. I am hard at work on them constantly, and something like this might be happening, and I might stumble into a lot of things that I need to talk about all at once. So once again, again, thank you for your support. Thank you for watching these and sticking around. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you all back for Super Metroid Experience Chapter 5.